So again, the basic idea of whole of this evolution chapter, I'm sure most of you have had earlier, either through general reading or through different topics that you have learned in the sciences. So the syllabus content, I have pasted it here. It's a huge chapter, but most of it we are going to rush through it because that has been already discussed quite often earlier, and that's my assumption. But yeah, if at all it is not discussed, we will be discussing that in the class after you say it. So these, of course, again, these red parts which is striked out, these are removed from the syllabus, and there is quite a lot chunk of it from this chapter has been removed already, especially this Lamarckism. Um, One of the interesting area, I must say, also the Darwinism that has been reviewed. If at all we want like reading about this particular topics, I will share, or of course the textbook is also there. I will share the reading otherwise. And then there is this evolution of man. That part has also been removed completely. So quite a lot of it has been removed, but still the major idea of this evolution is intact in this chapter. So this term evolution was introduced by this English philosopher Herbert Spencer, and he wanted to define or include uh, the representation of the phenomena that actually brings out the continuous and orderly changes in the nature. So whatever is happening in the nature in the continuous manner with the changes, he coined that particular term as evolution. And this is brought from the Latin word called as evolver, which ultimately means E means out, and the volver, it means to roll or to unfold. So something that is unfolding out, that means something that is changing over the time. That is what is rolling or unfolding literally refers to. So again, in your textbook there is hell lot of description around this. I have totally skipped it because that you would know. So evolution that occurs at different levels, and it involves both the components, that is living as well as non-living. Living in terms of course the living organism, and non-living in terms of different elements or different solar not solar, the stellar bodies and so on, right? So these different types of evolution that occur at different time point are mentioned here. So the first evolution that happens is at the molecular level, which we call as chemical evolution. So this changes in the elements, like from hydrogen it fuse the neutron and proton and so on, right? All of that led to the different element formation. That is a chemical evolution. Level of physical objects, like changes in the land topography, changing of the layers, like Himalaya was built and at some point there was this like ocean and stuff like that, tectonic plate movement. All of this is like a changes in the topography, land topography. That is physical evolution. And again, this I'm talking of only on the earth, but then that can happen in general on different planets or whichever massive body existed earlier. At the level of stars and planets in the universe, that is called as stellar or cosmic evolution. Whatever like Big Bang is one of the common example, I can put it here. And level of the living objects, that is the biological evolution. So from kind of ape category, we are evolved into this homo sapien category. That is a biological evolution. So there are these different types of evolution which can be categorized. We will be majorly looking at the biological evolution. We won't be looking at much of a chemical, physical or cosmic evolution. That probably cosmic evolution you will study sometime if at all you are interested in astrophysics. Physical evolution probably in geography, and chemical evolution in chemistry. we will be focusing on the more of this biological evolution. So this biological evolution is defined as the process of gradual change in organism, and it's not just the process of gradual change, but it is also to form more and more complex organism over the period of time. And complexity is not the criteria as such, rather it is more and more adaptation of that organism to fit into that environmental situation, and that's what makes the organism more and more complex. So it's not that complexity of organism is direct indicator of that a particular species is evolved or not. It is more with respect to the adaptation to the surrounding. So Darwin, which is one of the very famous name in the evolution, has defined evolution as a descent with modification. Descent means coming down or coming along the time with certain modification. That is what he has simplistically put it. Then there was this guy called as Theodore Dobzhansky. He has defined evolutionary biology as the study of history of evolution of newer and more complex organisms life, and especially on the earth from the pre-existing ones or pre-existing organism over a period of time. So let's say we talk of a particular Drosophila. How has it evolved over the time? Or let's say the primitive prokaryotic species, how have they built up to become eukaryotic and multicellular organism? So that is what this Theodore tried to explain. And this term, this bioevolution or evolutionary biology, this was specifically introduced by this guy called Mayer, and like later on it was also termed as organic evolution or biological evolution, which is ultimately same thing. Organic evolution it is called so because most of the matter within the living organism was organic, like whatever that Miller-Urey experiment that proved that certain chemicals are being formed within the whole system, whole of the universe, and then that started the life and so on. So that is the organic evolution. Now, like starting from the earlier time point, somewhere around let's say 20 billions of years of ago and so on, right? There was a big bang that happened, and this was explained by quite a few people, like in the history, that they assume that big bang. There is still a hypothesis whether it was real or not real. People are coming with different theories, because to go back to that time and trying and understand whole of this event, how it happened, what exactly happened, is totally dependent on the kind of signals that we get in terms of light, in terms of waves, in terms of particles, in terms of energy and so on, right? So that is still under study, but there were these what we call as primeval or cosmic matter or L, that whole of the bulk of or the whole of the what we call as cosmic matter that expanded, and then ultimately the temperature decreased. That is one hypothesis with the Big Bang theory, and then it led to later on becoming separate, and then it became planets and stars and so on. So that is like a totally physics part. So this hypothesis was first proposed in 1931 by this guy called as Abbe Lemaitre. And then later on people started studying it, which was supported by this Gamow in 1948 and D. Dike in this, 1964 it is, not 1064. So the particles, the assumption that was, or the hypothesis that was put forward in the Big Bang was the particles and the antiparticles, they were collided with each other and they formed the hydrogen atom. So due to the huge amount of energy that was released, some of the proton, neutrons, they were put together and they first formed the hydrogen atom, which fused progressively to become heavier atoms, of the different element, and then this process continued, and that's when all your barium, lithium, sodium, all these elements, they came into picture later, using the same event that was involved in the hydrogen atom production. So that was the hypothesis with the Big Bang theory. So this was the beginning of the cosmic evolution as well, because that's when the whole of the space was changing as well. So the cosmic matter, it exploded by a Big Bang, or again, that is an assumption. Like Big Bang, always, like we assume that Big Bang means something has to bang onto something, but that is not always true. Like I said, until and unless we know that there was another object which was as massive as the already existing cosmic matter, the possibility of that bang onto each other is very less. But it was more of a radionuclear explosion due to the lot of energy content, and that like that explosion led to the masses of gaseous hydrogen, which was called as nebulae, which is like a separated mass of the again, there were different nebulas depending on the size. They can be called as small or large, depending on how much of this gaseous hydrogen content was there. So from this nebulae, what we got was the galaxies. So nebula is actually the cold and spinning cloud of cosmic dust. And cosmic dust, again, does not literally mean a dust. It means different size of particles. And particles, again, we assume it to be a kind of nanometer, centimeter, millimeter. But these particles can be of kilometer or thousands of kilometer long. So that is the part of the nebula, and which got separated into numerous galaxies, which is the family of stars held together by the gravitational attraction. So this part we already know, and of course we know that the galaxy that we belong to is called as Milky Way galaxy, where Sun is one of the important star. So that is like kind of a quick summary from the starting point of the Big Bang to the evolution of the Earth. Again, while the Milky Way was generated, or one of the galaxy, which is Milky Way, which was generated, obviously that also led to literally thousands, not thousands, I guess it's millions of stars within Milky Way. And one of them is, one part is the solar system. Within the solar system, there is Earth and Sun, and of course the other planets. So that was kind of a quick summary of the how the life started in terms of cosmic evolution. Now, what were those conditions at the primitive Earth? Primitive Earth, as in, again, as soon as the Earth was formed, what was the situation that was developed at that time? So there was a very thick atmosphere. Now, what we have in terms of atmosphere is very thin, because the concentration as well as the layers of the different gases present around the Earth is not that like thick. So which was the case in the earlier time. So this thick atmosphere of the compound, like compounds, it refer to the all those gases released by the volcanic eruptions. Now, volcanic eruption usually lead to different hydrogen or sulfur, nitrogen, these kind of elements, and all of them, they existed in the gaseous form because the temperature was very high, and of course the water whichever was present in whichever amount, that was in the form of superheated steam. So there is a steam which is, let's say, around 100 and 110 degrees or so, and even higher temperature, this steam exists into a superheated form, which is like a very high energy content, like something that happens in the pressure cooker. So that is like that is still like very low temperature, but the temperature we are talking about is almost more than 1,000 degrees Celsius. So at that temperature, all of these gases along with the water, steam or superheated steam will be was existent, and that was a very thick atmosphere, which was termed as reducing atmosphere. I couldn't find why it was called reducing atmosphere, but there must be some connection, but I'm not aware of it. So in terms of the primitive atmosphere, the original temperature of the earth was estimated to be almost 6,000 degrees centigrade. Like what we have now is almost on an average room temperature is 30 degrees Celsius, like around us. Of course, I'm not talking about the poles of the earth, but in general, overall, there is temperature of 25 to 30 degrees on an average. So at such a high temperature during the primitive times, the elements, they could not exist in a free state. Uh, and they always existed like in the reducing atmosphere, that is in the gaseous form. And later on they became let's say oxygen mixed with certain iron molecule, and then it will form iron oxide, or the nitrogen will form the or will react with the sodium, then it will form sodium nitrite, and so on, right? So there were sulfides, nitrites, oxides of most of the elements, and that is what happened in the primitive atmosphere. And there was no free oxygen as well. So obviously these situations, these are not conducive to allow the growth of like the living species. And then over the time, of course, this became, there was free oxygen which changed, then there were elements which were separate, and then that's when probably the life has started on the earth. Also, the one of the most important factor for any living species or living organism to continue is to have a source of energy, and this energy can be into any form.
Sir,
Yes.
so like elements existed in free space, like free state. So why didn't oxygen?
Oh, could not exist in free state. That's what is the statement. This one you are talking, right?
Yeah, okay.
That's when I said this nitrite, sulfide, or oxides, they were formed and they were not in the free state. Yeah, that was a wrong statement there. Okay, so and then like I said, the energy is always required for living organism. Again, that amount of energy, type of energy was immaterialistic, but the energy has to exist. So those energy sources at the primitive earth were solar radiation in the form of UV and infrared rays. So whatever we have as a protecting layer of the ozone and stuff like that around the earth, it did not exist back then, which is like again millions of years ago. And that's when the UV light used to directly come to the earth along with the infrared, and of course the visible light was also there, which is the whole spectra of the wavelength. Electric discharge due to lightning and thunder, that was again a very common phenomenon, which was one of the source of energy. Volcanic eruption generating lot of heat was one source of energy. High temperature itself leading to the chemical radiation, that was one source of energy. Cosmic rays, there were different cosmic objects, and they were what we say, they were releasing certain energy in the form of rays from the space or the cosmos, and that was another source of energy. And then of course these energies, they were utilized either certain for certain chemical changes or something to happen with the living organisms. Of course, again, over the time, like when I'm speaking of one particular process, probably that is the process which would have happened in within a millions of years ago, or within millions of years, right? And again, that was probably billions of years ago. So this process is like a gradual change over the time. And what we experience now, like we have very less of UV radiation as of now. Like if we discard that fact that ozone layer is depleting, but in general, like if you go back 100 years in the history, you will find the ozone layer was probably very, very intact, and the amount of light that was coming to the earth was much more helpful for the human or all the other organisms to prosper. And now that will again probably go back in reverse because ozone is depleting and so on. lightning and thunder doesn't happen to that great extent as it used to happen earlier. Most of the volcanoes, they are kind of what there is a particular term for that. When the volcanic eruption stops, I guess death of volcano or something.
So
Uh,
dormant.
yeah. So
But sir, I had a question.
uh,
So uh, was there even water on Earth like at that time?
not water, but then hydrogen and oxygen, they could combine, and that is when I said this
So,
case.
but at that temperatures, like atoms won't form bonds. Like water, even if water there, it'll just split instantly into hydrogen and oxygen. It'll never combine at that temperature.
Correct.
So, like similarly, you'll never have like joint elements. You'll have only like free atoms roaming around, right?
Right.
So you must have had oxygen there.
No, what we are talking of free oxygen in terms of oxygen gas that we are talking. So oxygen as an atom obviously existed, but oxygen as a gas, individual oxygen molecule, not the element.
So there was nascent oxygen,
Ha.
not molecule.
Correct.
Okay.
And again, like I said, like 6,000 degrees is probably the earliest temperature that we know. Later on, as soon as it started reducing, obviously these elements, then water would have formed and so on. So that's the whole hypothesis. Okay.
So I thought the Earth started cooling because of asteroids coming and bringing water and ice from space. And then it rained and then it cooled down. But if it's so hot and water cannot exist, so how exactly did it cool down?
So, like, if the atmosphere is this hot, then like all these gases will just evaporate into space. Like right now, if you make the atmosphere into this hot, like if you make the atmosphere this hot, like there'll be no atmosphere on Earth, right? It'll just all go away, or only a few very dense gases can stay. Otherwise, the light ones will go away.
Right. But then that is when we talk of the expansion phenomena, right? When we talk of the expansion, that means the, let's say this objects, I would call them space objects, they were moving away from each other. The moment they are moving away from each other, obviously they have quite a lot of space generated. Again, I'm not talking that space is increasing, because that's another theory we would go into, that space is limited or it's indefinite. I don't know about it. But when we talk of this expansion phenomena, obviously that heat will be released. Now, if we talk of the 6,000 degree temperature, we can clearly see the reasons can be anything. But I would prefer to assume that it expanded, and then because of that expansion, it cooled down, which is like
What expanded?
the whole of the universe.
So it's an isolated system, right?
It's an isolated system. That means you are talking of universe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like it's an internal. So like we are talking about the Earth specifically, right? So like I saw in a documentary that okay, the before like in these times, what they've shown here, primitive Earth, it was like a ball of fire, right? Like Akshay was saying, and afterwards it cooled down. Like I don't know why, but it cooled down. And when it was cooled down, after that, the meteoroids came. You know, the late heavy bombard and stuff, which brought salt and water. Like
Yeah.
it was much later.
See, but that is again one theory. That is what I am trying to say. Like me, you will say one theory is right, and I will say no, other theory is right. By sitting here, we may not be able to judge which one is actually right and which one is not. So, miss, we can, and actually there are both of, rather there are many such theories which have been proved that they are correct, and people are still investigating what exactly had happened there. So again, I wouldn't say like you are right or I am right, but yeah, you could be right as well. Okay, so I guess I will move forward. And of course, and this is one of the very interesting part which goes to some extent in the mythology also, which talks about the origin of life, which literally means biopoiesis. Poiesis is literally the production or generation, and bios means life. So life generation or life production, that is the origin of life. So there are these different theories, like theory of special creation, which is very well known, probably at least in India. If you go and ask people, how did you come, or how does the human being or living organism came to earth, they will simply say, Bhagwan ne banaya, right? So that is one theory. But again, right or wrong, that is up to people to believe it. We are just learning here as a concept, and you can also develop your own thinking. Also, in Christianity, there is this materia prima thing. So, within the first 6 days of the evolution, the earth and the living organisms were created. So, there is a very good, like, what we say, description also given. So, first day, I guess, elements were generated or the planets were generated. Then next it was water was generated and oxygen. So something like this in sequence. And the last, on the 6th day, human was generated. 5th day, fish and other few other species were generated. But on the 6th day, the human they were generated, and that is like this materia prima. That is like first 6 days of the whatever generation phase. And the first man was Adam and the first female was Eve. That is what is believed as well. So that is what is theory of special creation. It's like literally special creation. Then there is another theory which talks of theory of catastrophism. This theory believes in that the earth itself has undergone many catastrophes, and every catastrophe, it has destroyed the life completely, and again the whole of the process starts over again, and this keeps on happening. That is this theory of catastrophism.
Then how does the theory or explain the origin of life?
Sorry,
So it explains the ending of life, right? How does it explain the origin?
origin, it's saying that every time it will restart over and over again. It does not say how, it just says about what part.
So, but like even I can see that life started somehow. That's not a theory. Right?
Well, but Pratham, these theories are outdated now.
Like the first theory, it's giving a reason. Like it's giving a hypothesis.
Yeah. But see, like these theories, they may or may not have any basis. These were like very, very old theories, which were even some of them, they even belong to before Christ era, like especially this theory of catastrophism. And like, people had some imagination of their own, and then when it becomes a mass philosophy, that becomes a theory. And that's what we are seeing here. It may or may not be true at all. So that's how this catastrophism works. So then there is this theory of eternity of life. This is again another interesting theory, which was introduced by this guy called Preyer in 1980. According to him, the life existed in the past and will continue to exist forever. Again, this does not speak clearly about how did the life start. It just is like something exists at any given point, that is the life. It will end, it will restart, it will end, and it will restart. And it's talking about the whole of the organism species, not just one particular species. So that is theory of eternity of life. Then there is this cosmozoic or interplanetary theory, or it's also called as theory of panspermia. What Akshay was referring to, it's something similar. So some objects, they came from the other planets or the other meteoroids and so on. So something like that, resistant spores, they came from other planets, and that seeded the life on the earth. That is one theory. This is quite popular theory that way, which is theory of panspermia. Panspermia literally refers to seed something. So that is what is seeding of the spores from the other space objects. So that is this theory. And then there is this theory of abiogenesis, which literally or what is called as spontaneous generation or autogenesis as well. This was given by these different fellows. These were again before Christ era. This Empedocles, Anaximander. These are the names of the people. Okay, these are not any other names. Xenophanes and Aristotle. Everyone would know. So these people, they have given theory of abiogenesis, which talks mainly about how the chemicals were generated first, and from those chemicals how the lives started. So we will discuss about this particular theory in the next class a little more, and then we will go to theory of biogenesis. That is the last theory in this whole of this sequence. Do you have any question here?